The first half of the 2024 Formula One season ended with a bang yesterday as we head into the summer break thanks to a highly entertaining and intriguing Belgium Grand Prix. But of course, the main talking point came after the checkered flag had come out, with George Russell being disqualified and Lewis Hamilton inheriting the win. Now, of course, this disqualification has led to many unanswered questions. Was it tyre related? Was it the lack of in-lap? Was it fuel usage within the race? Well, all of these are valid questions that do need to be answered, and I'm going to try my best to answer them to the best of my abilities in this video. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Now, of course, one intriguing aspect that could have accounted for Russell's disqualification has everything to do with tyres, and for two connected reasons. The first of those is that George Russell in the race decided to extend his stint and turn it into a one-stop strategy. This meant, of course, that he had to do a hugely extended period of time on the hard tyres in his final stint. So instead of doing the 16 or so laps on two sets of hards, he instead did over 30 laps on one set of hard tyres. Now, of course, with this comes the additional deficit of the amount of tyre wear, and of course from that the amount of rubber that comes away from the tyres as the stint unfolds. And so they potentially may not have accounted for the loss in weight that all four tyres would have accumulated over this particular stint of having extended it into a one-stop strategy. And of course, there's a second reason which connects into the first one, which could equate for the somewhat of a perfect storm in which George Russell was disqualified from the race. So as you all know, at the end of most Formula One races, except in Belgium, there's an in-lap from which the drivers will utilize that in that moment to collect all of the discarded rubber from all 20 Formula One drivers or whoever was still racing for the entirety of a given race. So it's something that has been done for many a year to help bring up the weight of the Formula One vehicles at the end of a Grand Prix. And with the Belgian Grand Prix for loads and loads of years now not having a in-lap, this means of course that the cars and drivers do not have the opportunity from which to actually get the discarded rubber and put them onto the tyres. Now let's actually look at George Russell's tyre, an example of how a traditional tyre at the end of a race would look. So as you can see on the left, we have George Russell's tyre, and this is what his hard tyres, which did 30 laps at the end of yesterday's race, looked like without any discarded rubber having been picked up. Now on the right, you have the traditional look of what a rear Formula One tyre would look like with the help and benefit of that given in-lap. And this is what I believe has potentially led to the whole disqualification of George Russell's W15. It's the lack of ability to pick up additional weight from the discarded rubber, and this has led to the 1.5 kilograms of his W15 being, unfortunately for him, underweight. And to just give a better understanding and feel of what rubber they're picking up from at the side of a track, here's a video showcasing that very rubber. Now, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are also another couple of avenues from which George Russell could have been disqualified from. And the second one of those was the fuel. Now, had they underfueled the car throughout the race and not calculated the calculations correctly, because of course, as we all know, Formula One teams never fuel the car above a weight limit in the sense of a Grand Prix distance. They always underfuel it with the hopes of a safety car, a virtual safety car, being deployed in a race. And when you take into consideration that all teams, of course, will know that the probability of a safety car or virtual safety car at a Belgian Grand Prix is above 70%, they also factor that into their equations and calculations. Now, of course, this could have been one of the other mitigating circumstances from which George Russell ended up having an issue, because of course that meant he would have had to have done additional lifting and coasting throughout the race. Now, what's lifting and coasting? Well, it's when you're not using the fuel to slow down the car in a braking phase, and you're lifting off essentially an extra 50 or 30 meters before the corner, and you're using the aerodynamics to slow the vehicles down instead. This is a way of saving fuel as well. Now, of course, a Formula 1 driver of George Russell's experience should know all about the ways in which to use the lift and coast. And so this is why I think this particular mitigating circumstance isn't one from which would have made George Russell be disqualified. He's got enough experience and races under his belt to utilize lift and coast to the fullest of his abilities. And there's one other factor to take into consideration when it comes to this whole debate regarding fuel. So cars are drained of fuel and raid absolutely dry at the end of every race in post-race scrutineering. So using more fuel than expected or going faster than expected will not be relevant in this situation, because the cars in post-race scrutineering never take fuel into the consideration when it comes to the weight. The only way fuel could be involved is if Mercedes failed to drain the car completely when they weighed it themselves, and a potential outcome reinforced by the fact that they sent the car to the FIA in good faith with fuel still in George Russell's W15. So these are the reasons why I think fuel is and should be taken out of the conversation when it comes to George Russell's disqualification. There's no plausible explanation in the way in which the tyres could be a case of why George Russell was disqualified. Then of course there is one other final kind of thing, and it's the thing of George Russell have an advantage. And this is all dependent on what this particular cause of it could be. So I feel like those are the most plausible explanations that have either been debunked or further strengthened. And as I've said, I personally believe the reason George Russell was disqualified was the additional weight loss from the tyres, having done such an extended stint on his final set of hard tyres and his only set of hard tyres. And the lack of an in-lap also contributed to it. Of course, maybe we will get some clarification from the Mercedes post-race debrief that they do on their official YouTube channel later this week on Tuesday, I believe, and they might give us the reasons behind it, but that potentially might not be the case. But yeah, that's my thoughts and interpretations of what happened yesterday with George Russell's disqualification. And I'm going to wrap the video up there, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, of course, leave a thumbs up in the video down below. If you're new and have stumbled upon this video, of course, as well, and you've enjoyed the content, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Right, I will see you all later on this week with some more Formula 1 videos. I'll see you then.